Hey, good morning and welcome everybody. We're looking forward to starting our second installation of this conversation, Strategies for Rural Post-Secondary Attainment in Illinois. My name is Patrick Sims and I am the Director of Policy and Research with the Hunt Institute. We appreciate you all joining us today. A couple quick logistical remarks before we get started. We will have plenty of time for Q&A and we want your questions, so please do make sure you're asking them, and we appreciate those of you who submitted some in advance. You have a Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, so though you'll be muted, please feel free to chat in questions at any time and we will be sure to get to them as soon as we can. Today, in particular, we're really excited about the group of folks that we have joining us today. First, though, I would like to just recognize and thank Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton for her leadership on this. This is really, her work driving this and her vision for education in Illinois. And we're so grateful to have been asked to be a partner in this and thank her for doing so. We'd also like to recognize Deputy Governor Jesse Reeves, who cannot join us today, but he was with us in the last installation. Hopefully he'll make the third one. He's been incredibly helpful in helping move this stuff, all this work forward as well. And we look forward to continuing to work with him on all this great work that we have to do together. So our first webinar last week on July 27th, we really discussed strategies for increasing rural post-secondary attainment in Illinois, especially thinking through things like college counseling, supporting FAFSA completion, and giving access to distance from a distance in post-secondary institutions. We do know, and especially true right now during the COVID-19 pandemic, but something that's critical regardless is access to broadband and technology is not equal among all of our students. So we're very fortunate with the individuals we have joining us today to help us think through ways that, excuse me, students can get better connected to the internet and have better access to devices. Two things that we know are critical for success in education. We know that educators have been going above and beyond, but we're going to talk about some more systemic ways to address these issues and really look forward to that today. So again, I'm going to thank and welcome Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton today, who the Hunt Institute is very proud to partner with. And Governor Stratton is a Hunt Cane Leadership Fellow, and we're very fortunate to have her in that program with us. And I'd like to turn it over to her to provide some opening remarks. Governor, still on mute there.
I'm going to get this right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Patrick, for that kind introduction, and of course to the entire team at the Hunt Institute. We are so honored to have you as a partner and doing this great work together. I also want to commend the Institute's staff for organizing this webinar series, Strategies for Rural Post-Secondary Attainment, and your tireless effort to improve policy and present opportunities for dialogue as it relates to education and our students. I would like to also thank Governor Pritzker, because it is his great leadership and support that has really helped us to increase resources to make education more equitable for everyone in Illinois, and we will continue to work on those efforts. I know that Deputy Governor Jesse Ruiz has already been acknowledged, and I know he's not joining us today, but I want to acknowledge his team and all of your input in making sure that this event could happen. And to all of the other dignitaries and webinar panelists, thank you. This webinar will really benefit from your input, your ideas, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to participate today. Now, for those of you who joined us last time, I think it was last week that we had part one, we are so thrilled to have you again, and then some of you are joining us for the very first time in this conversation, and welcome. We are so glad to have you with us. As chair of the Governor's Rural Affairs Council, I have seen the great resilience of Illinois' rural communities, as well as the significant challenges that rural schools face on a daily basis. The council determined that post-secondary education was a priority, and I'm honored to be hosting this webinar to further this critical conversation on education and technology. Now, as I always say, the conversation is part of a larger action plan and implementation of some real solutions. In our previous discussion on July 21st, we discussed the challenges that rural students face when it comes to shaping and having access to college. Today, we are going to take a deeper dive into some of these challenges. One glaring challenge came to the forefront because of the global COVID-19 pandemic, and that is the digital divide in rural America. The pandemic forced the country to pivot very quickly to remote learning. Now, oftentimes, students found themselves sharing one device for the entire family, dealing with connectivity issues, sitting in the parking lot of their schools just to try to get access to the internet. The digital divide impacts many rural students, and some studies show that as many as 16 million rural students live in a household that lacks either internet access, a digital device, or both. Also important to note, and this is really a striking statistic, it can be said that slightly less than 1 out of every 10 teachers nationwide also lack that same access to either internet or the digital devices. The divide is even more critical once we start looking at this data a little closer. For example, 35% of households with at least one Native American student lack broadband access. 30% of households with at least one Black student have no broadband. And 26% of all households with at least one Latinx student have no digital access. We know that schools and educators across Illinois have been working diligently to provide as much internet access and technology as possible to all of their students during this time. They've been doing incredible work, and we owe them all gratitude, our gratitude, and I know some of you are on the line today. However, we all know that we cannot rely on these emergency solutions forever. We must work to create innovative, long-term, and sustainable pathways to ensuring that every student in Illinois has equitable access to technology and the internet. And that's why I'm so proud, by the way, that Matt Schmidt, the director of our Office of Broadband at the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, is joining us today and will be presenting to you. He's one of the leaders of the charge in Illinois. And so we're grateful that he's with us. I want to thank all of the presenters, as well as those of you who are tuning in and actively engaging in this conversation. This is an issue that requires all hands on deck to make sure that our rural students and our educators can have the best possible outcomes. We look forward to working together and collaborating with all of you towards meaningful solutions for the rural students of Illinois. Thank you so much, and I'm going to turn it back over to Patrick.
Thank you so much, Governor Stratton. Excuse me, great way to get this discussion started. As you just heard, we're going to talk about a little more detail about access to broadband, particularly for rural students. And we are fortunate to be joined by someone in Illinois who no longer needs much of an introduction, thanks to Governor Stratton. Matt Schmidt, the director for the Illinois Office of Broadband, who is joining us from his car to illustrate to us how we can be connected remotely from many places and in many ways. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're also lucky to be joined by Dr. Sheila Martin, the Vice President for Economic Development and Community Engagement with the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, who will provide us with, help us get a little broader context from a national perspective, what some other states are doing. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Martin. And Dr. Martin, we'd love to hear a little bit about how states are responding to COVID-19. What's the impact that it's been on the rural digital divide so far, and what are some of the states doing to help respond to those challenges?
Well, thanks, Patrick. I'm really happy to be part of this and thinking about these issues in my home state of Illinois. When I arrived at APLU a couple years ago, I very quickly began looking into the digital divide and how universities are working to address it. And you might wonder why a public higher education association cares about closing the digital divide. But the answer is it's important to us because we're fighting to close the achievement gap. So APLU leads a number of initiatives that bring our institutions together around issues of broadening college access, increasing degree completion, and improving employment readiness for students. And we see the digital divide as one of a number of causes of this achievement gap. It really puts a barrier between students and in each of those goals: higher education access, degree completion, and career success. And though the digital divide can have an impact everywhere, it's especially difficult to solve in rural areas. And this is really also part of a broader initiative that we have at APLU to work on closing the achievement gap for rural students. We don't typically think of rural students as a separate demographic the way we might think about first-generation students or students of particular backgrounds, but rural students really are an underrepresented demographic in our institutions. And we are beginning to understand and study this issue and think about how we might do a better job of providing those students better success, getting to and through our institutions and giving them success in their careers, particularly careers in rural communities. So Matt's going to talk about the situation in Illinois, and I certainly don't have the stellar background that he does in terms of broadband itself and what we need to do to fix the problem long term. But as the Lieutenant Governor mentioned earlier, about 15% of college students in 2018, according to the American Community Survey, lived in households that didn't have access to broadband internet, and 4% had no access to internet at all. And this situation is worse, of course, for African American, Latinx, and Native American college students. So how do those students continue to work towards completing their degree when we sent them home due to COVID? I was actually really energized. I mean, I was proud of our institutions because they did work so quickly to do what they needed to do and close down their institutions and send students home in response to COVID, despite the extreme cost that this imposed on the institutions themselves. And they knew that they were sending their students a lot of hardship. But thankfully, the Cooperative Extension Service, which is the land-grant universities outreach, they have 32,000 professionals that collaborate with their communities. They live in these communities and they work really hard to understand important issues and apply university research and other assets to address those issues. And the digital divide is one of those issues that universities have worked hard to address. And way before COVID, they've been working on this. So they've helped communities access funding for broadband. They've been building their own networks and providing those networks as digital backbones, like what Northern Illinois University's done with NIUNet and iFiber, and what Urbana-Champaign has done with the big broadband project. And they help communities plan for the arrival of internet. They make sure that they're connecting the most critical places, the anchor institutions, and making sure that that's getting done. And universities are also providing digital skills training to make sure that people can take advantage of the opportunities that broadband provides, but that they're safe. They're teaching them how to be safe on the internet, particularly important for people who might be getting access to it for the first time. So that for example, there's a program called the Digital Innovation Leadership Program out of the University of Illinois Extension. And so they're, helping communities understand how they can benefit and quantifying the impact that good access to broadband can have. And they're researching the effectiveness of different technologies, different training modules, and business models for broadband provision and adoption. And importantly, researchers have highlighted the devastating impact that the digital divide has had on the economic divide between urban and rural communities. So there's a researcher named Roberto Gallardo at Purdue, and he's demonstrated that rural communities are much more vulnerable to job losses as the country switched over to remote work due to the digital divide, but also because of the type of work that rural residents do. And I can provide links to the white paper. APLU's published a white paper about all the different work that universities are doing related to the digital divide. And I can also provide a link to Roberto's analysis of rural jobs. And I'm going to stop right there and turn it over to Matt, and then we can talk a little bit later about the short-term things that universities have done to make broadband more available in the context of COVID-19.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martin. And I did just want to jump in quickly and note that we will be sending out a key takeaways document afterwards. So those links will be really helpful for us to include and for everybody to pay attention, to look out for. So we appreciate that. Sorry, Matt, I will turn it over to you.
Well, thanks a lot, Patrick and Dr. Martin and Lieutenant Governor. It's great to share this virtual stage with you here today. A couple things I just wanted to clarify out of the gates. First of all, my head is not really this big. I'm cramped in my car right now, and so the computer's pretty close to me. Indeed, my wife is pregnant, so she's in the hospital right now getting a checkup. They wouldn't let me in because of COVID-19, but when it's go time, I may have to go, but I think that's probably going to be this evening. And so it's a pleasure to join you here today, and I guess it just speaks to, I think, broadband ubiquity. We can do what we want to do, be productive wherever we want to be productive at any time of the day because of broadband and the ubiquitous connections that we're all striving for. And so we practice what we preach here at the Illinois Office of Broadband. So a couple things I just wanted to say. I've really lived this rural broadband narrative for much of my career. I'm a former state legislator from Minnesota, represented Red Wing, which is about an hour southeast of Minneapolis-St. Paul, within the Minneapolis-St. Paul labor shed, but also very rural in agrarian. And a lot of challenges that community, those communities in that area faced regarding connectivity for precision agriculture, or for connecting for remote learning or telehealth, or just being productive. And so I've been spending a lot of time talking with farmers and folks in rural communities and students and folks in higher education about the urgent need for ubiquitous broadband, not only on campus, but everywhere around us so that we can be productive anywhere, anytime. And so I brought that experience with me to Illinois for one particular reason. Illinois has the largest state matching grant program in the country's history. At $420 million in the program, $400 million of which is devoted to matching grants. The state of Illinois is poised to solve this ubiquity challenge for broadband access, but it doesn't just happen overnight. And so we're just getting this conversation started here in Illinois on the infrastructure front. But that's just the start of the conversation. We also take really seriously the idea of broadband adoption and utilization, and engaging communities and folks around the state on how best to utilize internet once you have it. And so if you think of a three-legged stool, the access piece is one. Adoption and getting people to adopt and sign up for service is a second leg of that stool. And a third leg, at least the way I look at it, is that utilization. What are we going to do with broadband once we have it? And I think engaging higher education institutions is a critical step in making sure that we're striking balance with that three-legged stool: access, adoption, utilization. And so in Illinois, there's a couple of things here that are really worth pointing out. One, this, Connect Illinois, partnering with communities, institutions of higher education, and internet service providers to get broadband everywhere throughout the state. And we've got some goals for 2024 and 2028 to make sure that happens. And so our near-term goal is we want everybody to have basic access throughout the state by 2024. And we're well on our way to get, we have what we call our Illinois Century Network, K-12 schools with connectivity at the gigabit speed on campus. But now culture that we've got connectivity when we're off campus. And we'll be starting in the next several weeks our digital equity programming around making sure that folks have access when they're off campus, or if a challenge addressed, but they don't have a computer in front of them. And so that device, that computer, that laptop, that mobile device, that's another barrier for a lot of Illinoisans. And so we're trying to take a holistic approach to making sure that everyone has, but also that you have access to the device that you need to be productive. And so I'll stop myself right there, because if I get talking broadband, sometimes I don't stop. But there's a lot to be said about what we're doing with broadband in Illinois, and in the coming time here together, I hope we're able to get into it a little bit more. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Matt. And so I want to ask a question to both of you, and it's a question I think we heard a couple times here already in the Q&A. And Brian Munoz in particular has asked how we can help communities, particularly communities that are predominantly people of color in Southern Illinois who are disproportionately affected by a lack of reliable internet access. He notes, growing up in a majority Hispanic community outside of St. Louis, that there was one provider and that they struggled to get an additional provider in there because of the rates of return, and the provider they did have was not very reliable kind of economics, where it's not necessarily promising for a private industry to go in and reap the returns that they would want to profit. What should we be thinking about from a policy perspective to support those communities? And turn that over to Dr. Martin first.
Sure. Well, I just say we as a society have made a lot of investments in infrastructure where the private sector wouldn't be able to invest because there's a lack of rate of return. And broadband is definitely one of those instances in which there is a market failure, and a public investment will lead to public returns that are way greater than the private return. And so it makes perfect sense that the state of Illinois is providing large matching grant programs, and the federal government also should be investing in this. And they are. The investment is probably slower, definitely slower than it needs to be. But if you think just about the returns to higher education, every new student that is able to earn a degree because they have access to broadband, and that's going to become even easier as we move more and more content online. It's going to be easier for rural students who might have felt place-bound in the past to get a degree while staying in their rural communities because they can get full degrees online now. So just that return on investment is very high, not to mention the potential impact on rural businesses, telehealth, and all of the other reasons that the social rate of return is so much higher than the private rate of return on that sort of investment.
Matt, anything to add?
Sure. I mean, I think, Dr. Martin, you really hit the nail on the head there. I think it really does come down to investing in critical infrastructure, and we do it in all sorts of examples, whether it's roads and bridges or other public utilities. Now, broadband isn't necessarily considered a public utility formally in all levels of government. I think COVID-19 has revealed its vital importance in our day-to-day lives. And so I think that that's a conversation that we'll see play out in the months ahead and in years ahead. But I think when you look at the economics, much of the areas that lack access to high-speed internet, you may see population sparsity, you may see under adoption, you may see other challenges to the traditional business case that make it difficult for a private firm, a broadband provider, to invest in those markets. And so that's why when you take an approach like we've seen with Connect Illinois, a public-private partnership, truly, where you have the state putting forward some funding, but you're requiring either the federal government or from the local government, where you bring different folks together, everyone has a little bit of skin in the game, and hopefully you're better off for it. You're able to address that market failure, so to speak, that lack of return, in invest in critical infrastructure in areas that absolutely need it. But for the sparsity or other challenges, the business case just doesn't add up. And one thing I'd just like to emphasize, what we're doing in Illinois here, we're requiring all investments be scalable to at least 100 by 100 megabit per second. And basically that means you can change the electronics on either side of the fiber connection, and this thing is going to serve you well into the future, decades into the future. And so we're solving the problem once and for all. And that's something that I think is really, really important when you think about this. We're making a public investment to solve a problem for the long term. And so I think that that's a real solid justification for the use of public dollars to this end.
Great, thank you so much. So we got another question that was specifically about one potential way to help solve this issue, and it was about 5G and the promise that it holds, particularly in very sparsely populated rural areas. And the question was if there are any policy solutions currently being considered at the state level to support the expansion of 5G infrastructure, while recognizing that there are real political challenges within that. So we'd love to hear about whatever kind of as we think about political challenges, what are some of the key ones, just both the 5G and general expansion, and if there is anything currently underway. And Matt, I'll come to you first, just so you can answer maybe more specifically about if there's something underway.
Sure. I think we're all really anticipating the promise of 5G and what that could mean to our day-to-day lives. And so I think that the question is, when is the investment coming? How far will the reach be into rural areas? And to what extent will gaps persist moving forward? And I have, great optimism that 5G is going to be an investment worth making, and it's going to have a lot of positive benefits in our lives. The fear I have, though, is that it's not going to get everywhere, and it's certainly not going to get everywhere overnight, and that gaps will persist. And so I go back for the last 10 years or so, I've been advocating for public investment in broadband, like we're doing here in Illinois. And we've seen the 4G or the 5G conversation sometimes distract from the critical need for investing in long-term infrastructure. And so I view 5G in our investments in one or the other, that the ideal investment that we're making in Illinois is both. In our Connect Illinois wireline investment, and also in the 5G, wireless capacity that we're seeing the private sector usher forward. And so I think that there's great promise. I fear that it's not going to get everywhere over in many rural areas moving forward. But I welcome it. I think this kind of private investment is great for the state of Illinois, and we want to do everything we can to partner with that kind of investment.
Thanks, Matt. Dr. Martin, would you like to add anything specific to this?
I don't really have much to add to that. I'm sure Matt's much more technically proficient with respect to 5G and where it might be able to go. I know that that there are, sort of hopes that it will address some places, and it might be, I think that there are topology issues related to 5G that might be an issue in some rural communities. But I'm not a technical expert on 5G, so I'll just leave it there.
Sure. Well, and thank you to Jason Klein for chatting that question in. And anyone else who has questions, please chat them in as well. We just had an anonymous chat that asked about, and I think this could apply both to 5G or any other kind of approach that we take. Once there are those kind of partnership investments and the support from the government, how do we ensure also that the maintenance, the cost to maintain these networks will be fulfilled? And how do we make sure that communities, their services don't fall into disrepair? And Dr. Martin, happy to come back to you if you have any thoughts specifically around that.
Well, I'm not sure what kind. I think it depends on the business model, but certainly we've seen that maintenance of infrastructure is something that does get the short shrift sometimes, and that maintenance should be built into the business model from the start. I don't know if Matt has more to say about that.
Matt, anything you'd want to add?
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that, even though we say, hey, the investment in Connect Illinois is going to solve the problem once and for all, that doesn't mean we should take our eye off the ball. And I think there's a lot of examples of where we need continued investment, smart policy to pair with that. For instance, I mentioned our Illinois Century Network, over 2,000 miles of fiber connecting our institutions of higher education and our K-12 school facilities. That network, it's offering incredible value for the campuses that are part of it, but it doesn't maintain itself, and that's going to take continued public infrastructure. So keep our eye on that ball and make sure that we're continuing to invest and make sure that maintenance continues. The last thing we want to do with a broadband infrastructure network is not maintain it and that network over time than we otherwise would if we were being proactive in maintaining it. So, like a road or a bridge, you can see the disrepair if you don't keep up with the investment that's needed. Now, on our Connect Illinois, our matching grant program, through that public-private partnership, the expectation is that the private sector, our broadband providers, are going to be making those maintenance repairs and driving that investment into the years ahead. And so that's, I think, the novelty of that kind of approach is that they've got skin in the game. They've got strong incentives make continued investments.
So we are very fortunate
in Illinois that we're really excited about. We just reached a contract with a reputed national firm called Connected Nation. They work with a lot of states. Pronged approach here in Illinois. One, Connected Nation will be working with our broadband providers to get.
Okay, looks like so Matt, we're fortunate that we do have you via phone. Unfortunately, the network's been a little spotty here in the last few minutes. I'm gonna. Oh, no problem. And we appreciate you connecting from wherever you can. Dr. Martin, I did want to ask a follow-up question. We've talked a lot about the access to broadband and how important that is, but we know that a lot of students still struggle with access to the technology they need to be able to leverage that broadband. Could you share a little bit about what are some ways that we can improve access to technology?
Well, universities themselves have done quite a bit in order to make the technology available to their students. At North Carolina State University, for example, they knew when they sent students home that a lot of them would struggle to have not just the broadband, but also the technology they needed. So they sent a survey to all their undergraduate students asking about access to both broadband and the computers they needed. And because they already had the information about what places, what areas of the state were less well connected, they actually reached out personally to the students who they knew had gone back to those areas to ask them about whether they needed help. And they did help them troubleshoot problems with technology. They lent them devices. They troubleshooted problems with connecting to the internet. They provided Wi-Fi hotspots. There are a number of university extension programs who have worked with Wi-Fi hotspot lending programs, often in partnership with their libraries. A lot of local libraries do have these Wi-Fi hotspots that they can loan out. There are a number of nonprofits that universities work with that will take technology that is no longer, I'll say, that the universities have sort of replaced this technology with newer technology, but the nonprofits are recycling that and refurbishing those that equipment and making it available to folks. And so there are a number of universities that work with those kinds of programs. So I think those are some examples. I mean, more broadly, there are some models in Washington State, they have a model called the Broadband Access Team, and that's a Washington State extension cooperative extension model, where it really is a model of engagement with local communities to figure out what is it that you need related to access to the internet in your community. Is it broadband planning? Is it figuring out how to get more devices into the hands of students? And so that model is easily replicable. It has support from Microsoft. And Microsoft has been supporting a lot of nonprofits that are making technology available to students that don't have it.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. And Matt, this was, I think, utilization. Your third piece was one of your three legs to this work. And so how is your office thinking about ensuring that students and young people have access to the devices they need so they can actually use that broadband access?
Yeah, and hopefully the audio is better here. I really apologize for that. So there's a couple of different things that we're working on right now, and one is, Dr. Martin had kind of alluded to it, is computer refurbishing, and we think that there's great opportunity here in Illinois to leverage used devices, whether they're laptops or desktop computers, whether from the public sector or private sector, working with nonprofits and setting up a statewide network where we're able to make sure that access as one limiting factor is addressed through our connectivity investments, but that you have devices addressed through supplemental programming. And so I think that's a big piece of this digital equity conversation, is making sure that folks who need a computer, a laptop or a desktop or a device of another kind can get access to that. And so that's something that we'd like to see moving forward on the digital equity piece. Also, you talk about utilization and engaging trusted community organizations. I think with COVID-19, the understanding for remote learning or telehealth and the vital nature of those connections and those utilization examples, it's paramount. And so the extent to which we're able to get specific with community organizations and providers and trial some new approaches to how to use internet in a productive way that can be scaled up over time through either our grant program or related programming that adds value to what we're doing. And so those are just a couple examples of how we look at digital equity and utilization. It's not just the connectivity piece, it's also the device aspect of the conversation, and then also piloting partnerships with organizations that are trusted in community that can help individuals better understand how to use internet and be more comfortable with it. And now, Patrick, when I cut out earlier, I was talking about something really exciting about our mapping work, and I think it comes back to this equity conversation, because if you look at the map of Illinois and where broadband is and where it is not, that's just based upon the best data that the Federal Communications Commission has. And what we'd like to do in Illinois is pursue a more equitable approach to mapping that relies upon not just the provider data of where they are and where they are not when it comes to broadband service, but also incorporating some field testing through our partner Connected Nation, and also end user speed tests that will engage the public, so they can say, hey, I'm taking a speed test where I'm at right now. It's going to feed into a database, and we're going to be able to use that with our Office of Broadband to further validate where broadband is and where it isn't. And so it's not just somebody elsewhere telling us where broadband is and isn't, but it's rather an interactive process that's engaging the community. And we think that that's a really important part of this piece. Where is broadband, where it isn't, and it's going to help us target our resources accordingly.
Great, and thank you so much for circling back. Dr. Martin, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, the speed test thing is incredibly important, along with the other things that you mentioned that involve not relying on the providers for the information. I think one of the roles that universities can play is to be a neutral source of information about what is actually happening on the ground, and the speed test and programs like the one you mentioned, Matt, are really important for that. And there are a lot of organizations that are doing that, and that's the kind of information that communities need to really plan, well, where is it that we need to get better in order to make sure that we're able to do digital ag, smart ag technologies, telehealth, where are the needs the greatest? And, where do we really need to invest more in the infrastructure to make sure that people have what they need, especially in light of COVID. Even though this is a really long-term issue and COVID is short-term, I think in the long run, we are seeing a permanent shift in the way people are doing business that really highlights the importance of making sure that we're not only getting information from providers and vendors, but that there's a neutral source of information.
Great, thank you for that. So, Matt, I've got one question that's chatted in specifically for you, and then I have a question I'd like to close with both of you on. But the question was around timeline and understanding there are a lot of moving parts with your overall efforts. But the question was, especially given the current drastic needs, when should folks in rural areas in Illinois expect for real improvement in access to broadband?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, there's a few things going on here with our Connect Illinois program. We just deployed our first $50 million of funding to 18 different providers or local governments, and that work is starting immediately. And so it's not incumbent upon the state necessarily to do the work. It's at the provider level. But we're trying to do everything that we can to expedite the process of deploying those funds and helping our provider partners get in the field and deploy their networks. And so that work is happening right now. We're planning on having another funding round later this fall. And so I think that's really promising that we're moving quickly on this program. But I certainly understand that if you don't have access to broadband today. You want it as quick as you can. And in fact, I had a call 8:30 this morning from a gentleman in rural Illinois asking, Matt, what can we do to get better broadband? And so, I guess I would issue this challenge to our communities around the state and individuals too. Local organizing really matters. And if you're in a sparsely populated portion of a county, for instance, and you and your neighbors lack access, organizing really helps. And you can come to our office and let us know about potential customers in your area, get names and addresses and phone numbers and emails and that sort of thing. And we can put you in touch with nearby internet service providers. That's our Making Connections effort that we have on our webpage. Otherwise, short of that, we have a number of mobile providers in Illinois with whom we're happy to point folks to, and we're starting to track that mapping so that we know what is the ideal mobile provider in a given area, given their network capacity. And otherwise, there's some CARES Act dollars, federal dollars coming through the pike. I know the State Board of Education is working with school districts right now on helping address some critical access needs for school this fall. And so there isn't one answer here, but I think it's rather putting together a holistic approach to broadband that invests in short-term connectivity with devices and hotspots, or long-term investment in fiber that will stand the test of time. There's more I could say, Patrick, but in the sake of time, I'll stop myself there.
Understand. Please let us know if there's anything specifically you would like us to put in the key takeaways to help refer people to some resources. And Dr. Martin, did you want to jump in on this, or were you just getting ready for the next question?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to mention that one effort that's been really interesting, a number of the cooperative extension offices have extended their Wi-Fi that's in their offices out into their parking lots. And I know this is not a perfect solution, but it allows people to drive in and use the internet as is required. And Washington State University went further. They actually collaborated with their Department of Commerce and the Library Association and the State Broadband Office. They have over 300 drive-in Wi-Fi hotspots throughout the state and a map, so that if you are in a rural community where you don't have access, you can at least, and this is very imperfect, but you can at least find a spot not too far away where you can drive in and do your telehealth session, or load up your homework or do your Zoom call, whatever it is. And I want to emphasize that this issue of organizing is really important, because as Matt noted, that signaling of demand, I think, is really important. And I think getting businesses, farms, manufacturers, and other businesses, as well as residents together to demonstrate that there could be enough demand to make this worth the investment, that could be very helpful.
And Patrick, if I could jump in real quick, Dr. Martin, thank you so much for bringing up the Wi-Fi hotspot map. We have one of those too on our Connect Illinois website, and we partnered with various state agencies, in particular the Board of Higher Education in Illinois, to put together a map. And it's not ideal. We know that doing homework or accessing the internet from a parking lot is not the best way of doing it. But if that's the best thing that you've got right now in these challenging times, we've got a map. We'll be updating it again going into the fall school year. And again, it's on our Connect Illinois website. I'll send that link to you, Patrick.
Perfect. Thank you. And we know we need both short and long-term solutions. So we do appreciate that additional context and contribution there. We've talked a lot about how many things need to intersect: access to technology, access to broadband, having higher education leaders involved, having business, et cetera. What are some of the ways that state leaders really should be thinking about making sure that all of these individuals are working together, these different stakeholders, so that we have the right people and information at the table to actually achieve full access to all these different needs that folks have? And so thinking about higher ed policymakers, local leaders, et cetera. Happy to turn that over to you first, Dr. Martin.
Well, I think there's probably a lot of different ways to organize that work. I think what is important, as I mentioned earlier, is that the person who organizes this is considered a neutral party, that they can develop a data backbone to support the effort, and support what might be called a collective impact model, where you're not trying to direct things from the top, but you're trying to aggregate all of the different things that are happening all over the state, because I'm sure there are many nonprofits, higher education organizations, state agencies, and other other groups that are working to solve this problem. But what does it all add up to? And do we have our eye on the long-term ball? Do we have a set of objectives that we all know we're working towards? And are we getting together every once in a while to see where we are on that set of objectives? Does everyone know what their part is in moving towards those objectives? And that's sort of a collective impact model, which has been used for everything from, you know, education, improvements in education to, reducing health disparities can work, I think, in this case as well.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly, and I think just a couple examples here that we're working on. First of all, our Office of Broadband is lean, and so we rely upon strategic partnerships. And we've forged a really strong partnership with Illinois Extension, University of Illinois, and we've had a couple of different webinar series, and so that's been a very strong strategic partnership for us. Likewise, with the Benton Institute for Broadband and Society, based in Evanston, Illinois, they do a lot of work on communicating best practices and developments on the broadband stage nationally. And because they're based in Illinois, we've put together a modest but still really important newsletter trying to communicate to Illinois stakeholders what's happening on the broadband front. And so that's Illinois Broadband Connections. If you haven't signed up, check that out. You can link to it from our website. Beyond that, I think this is a kind of a long-running, frustration or opportunity I see in government, and that's breaking the silos, from one agency or department to the next. And this may sound kind of self-important with broadband and so forth, but I really have looked at it as being the issue that is the glue that kind of holds together, our economy, our way of life, but also government. Broadband's critical to what we do in education, as we're seeing with COVID-19, critical to what we do in healthcare, critical to public safety, to transportation, et cetera. And so we want to make sure that we're communicating on opportunities in broadband from one agency to the next or to the next. And so some states will have what you call a broadband sub-cabinet or perhaps something less formal where folks from different agencies are getting together, staying in touch about opportunities to align resources and effort. And I think that's something that we're doing informally here in Illinois and that I look forward to doing more of in the months and years ahead, is trying to align that kind of effort and stay in touch, because there's so much opportunity if we're talking with one another, both in government and beyond government.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. And I'm going to close from my perspective, but if you all would like, either of you would like to have anything else as closing remarks, I'll welcome that. But I'm going to close with the comment from Chris Merritt, who chatted in that he would like to suggest that broadband planning is just one piece of overall rural development planning, which I think we heard from both of you throughout, and how important it is for communities to develop a vision for that technology and how it's going to help business and individuals within the community. So thanks, Chris, for chatting that in. We appreciate you participating. I will give either Dr. Martin or Matt, if you have any last closing remarks you want to make sure you share before we get to hear from our students and practitioner.
Yeah, I'll just say I really appreciate that comment, because broadband is a tool, and it's a tool for rural economic and community development that has been unfortunately missing from too many of our communities. And it really is, it's an equity issue that has really come to the fore in the wake of COVID. And I would encourage you to continue to work with the University of Illinois and all of your higher education partners. It's not just cooperative extension at the University of Illinois that has outreach efforts. All of the universities are pretty committed to working in their community to solve these problems. So particularly public and land-grant universities. And so I encourage you to continue to work with them.
Yeah, and Dr. Martin, I see myself nodding to everything you say today. So amen to that. I would just add, I guess, Patrick, that, we have an Illinois Connected Communities program. We're engaging a cohort of 12 communities around the state to do broadband planning and capacity building. We think this sort of thing is critically important to planning and in anticipating where investments should be made in access, adoption, utilization. And so that's one piece, but it doesn't stop there. I think just kind of growing that effort organically is really important. And we look forward to partnering with higher education in new ways as well. In the months ahead, I'd love to to pair our nation-leading investment in broadband infrastructure with a similar research capacity so that we can better point to best practices here in Illinois, what other states are doing really well, and document the impact that we're making here in broadband. The connections are just the beginning of the conversation. It's the downstream impact in remote learning, economic development, closing equity gaps of other kinds, telehealth. We've got to be chronicling this and telling that story so that we can continue to reap the benefits of it moving forward. I'll stop there. Thank you for letting me join, and I really apologize for the technical difficulties earlier.
Not a problem. Thank you so much for joining, despite the your own personal circumstances and more important things today that you have going on. I will echo what Eric Zornical chatted in, thanking you, and also saying hope that everything goes well with delivery of your baby and for your family. Dr. Martin, thank you so much for joining us as well. It's very much appreciated. And I know that this is just the beginning of the discussion. We will be following up with plenty of the links and other information that both of you shared out. So thank you once more. With that, we are fortunate now to be able to be joined by 3 other individuals who are going to give us an on-the-ground perspective of what their access to broadband and technology means to their work, and both personally and within a school district, especially during this time of COVID-19. So first, we're very thankful for Terrence Dickerson, who is a student at Carl Sandburg College, for joining us. And we also have Tiffany Turner, a student from Southeastern Illinois College, joining us. So thank you to the 2 of you. And finally, we have Dr. Jennifer Garrison, a superintendent with Vandalia School District, joining us. And Dr. Garrison, I'm going to come to you first and ask you what opportunities have arisen from the COVID-19 as it relates to ensuring that students have equitable access to internet and technology.
So to try to ground us, I want to share a little story pre-COVID, November 6th, when the Partnership for College Completion did their rural report in Vandalia. We had some of our student leaders on site, specifically seniors looking to transition into the college pipeline. And what we heard pre-COVID was a huge equity gap as far as seeing that college is affordable or accessible to them. Then fast forward to March, when we hit our shutdown, our state shutdown, really the equity gap was amplified as we switched to remote learning in 2 weeks in K-12 schools. We were 1-to-1 at that time, 3 through 12th grade. So an opportunity we've had is to put devices in all of our students, gearing up for the 2021 planning. So we will be 1-to-1 K through 12 for the 2021 school year. But we are 221 square miles in Vandalia School District. It is not only an equity issue, but it's an access and affordability issue. So while my students will have a device in their hands, best practice said that we should be synchronous learning 2.5 hours if we shift to remote learning model. But what my team is actively doing is looking for asynchronous models, because yes, we are going to have Wi-Fi available in our parking lot, but for a parent, let's say working in our local hospital who's working 12-hour shifts, then they are driving, again, looking at that K-12 perspective, maybe their 6-year-old to the parking lot after they work a 12-hour shift, and then they're expected to do 5 hours of learning. It's just not realistic. So we're looking at a community model where within Vandalia city limits, we can access maybe our community college, our churches, our local YMCA, so we can have the Wi-Fi available to our students. From the college pipeline, what we saw was a drastic the shutdown provided us an opportunity to look at really the P20 pipeline of the CTE specific courses, so career and technical ed, which are required due to hands-on competencies. And how could we accomplish that in a remote learning environment? There wasn't a path at that point in time in March, but we had some very deep, rich conversations with our community college board, our Board of Higher Education, the Illinois State Board of Education, to really look at those opportunities. The last thing I want to say before I shift over to the students is when we talk about the collective impact model, we believe in collective impact, but it's how do we get started? We need the Illinois Broadband Network or the state policy leaders to really help us, give us that logic model or per se, because when you're in a rural district and you are the leader of the rural district, I'm the only one in central office. So I don't have this team of multiple people that I can go out and deploy for that collective impact model. And while my IT director, he's one, has that expertise, I might not have that expertise in how to build that capacity. I do want to highlight a huge opportunity through the governor's office and the Illinois Broadband Network, and Matt might have to talk more about this, even though he wasn't planning to talk in this session. But for a short-term opportunity, we're looking at broadband on a bus. Is that possible? That's one of the pilots that we're looking at. Thankfully, Vandalia was chosen for that pilot. So I'll stop there because I can talk forever, but I'll pause and give the students an opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison. It's a great introduction, and it's a helpful reminder just in the different challenges that districts are facing. And we're all struggling right now, I think, with capacity in different ways. So it's helpful. Tiffany, we'd love to come to you next, and would welcome just a little bit about your background and where you are at school now, and then also if you have any advice for state leaders who are working right now to improve rural students' access to post-secondary education, what would that be?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Hi, I'm Tiffany. As we've already said, I live in Illinois. A lot of people, when I say I live in Illinois, they assume I live near or in Chicago, and that's not the case. I live in Southern Illinois, and I'm 6 hours, I believe, away from Chicago. So I live in a very small rural farm town called Galatia. The nearest town where we do like all of our shopping and stuff is like 10 miles away. So that kind of gives you a little bit of background of where exactly I am located. I've grown quite familiar with the lack of high-speed broadband access in my area, and the kind of rural versus urban divide in the digital expansion. I've lived here my whole life, and I've had many struggles when it comes to internet. An example is last year, there was an ice storm during the finals week, and it knocked out like all of our electricity and all of that stuff. So obviously there was no internet access. Luckily the electricity was fixed. However, the urgency to fix the internet was not as severe, which can be understandable, but seeing that it was finals week, I had to travel over to three towns away, to take my final where the internet had been fixed. So I've definitely grown familiar with the, I guess, lack of urgency in the rural communities, if that makes sense. I've had many friends have the exact same experiences and had to deal with that kind of added stress to a finals week, or just the stress of not having the proper access to any sort of broadband access. As in the age of coronavirus, the internet is no longer a luxury, but at this point it's become a necessity and a utility for anybody that wants to further their education, as almost all classes have moved online now, or to those just trying to do like their day-to-day job. It's definitely forced me to realize that it's no longer just a luxury to have a high-speed internet access or broadband. Yes. Oh, I found a statistic that it is 39% of people living in rural areas, such as the one that I live in, lack access to high-speed broadband, compared with just 4% of the urban Americans, which I found was very surprising. As for the advice, sorry, one second. As for the advice, I really liked what somebody said in the Q&A with broadband expansion is just one piece of having rural development in this community. And I'm sure there's a lot of ways that the officials, I guess, could work together with swiftness. Sorry, one second. I like the idea of setting long-term goals not just the short-term goals of fixing things now and waiting for it to work out in the future, if that makes sense. Yes.
That's great, Tiffany. And so we heard from you. I mean, it's just, we need to balance urgency, which is real, and need to get access today, but we also need to be thinking long term and about how to help communities. So very helpful. Thank you for getting us started here. Terrence, we're going to come to you next, and we'd love to hear a little bit about your background and your current educational experience, and other rural students that may be listening or will receive advice from other people on this call. What would you give as some advice to rural students as they're working towards earning their own post-secondary degree?
Okay. Hi, I'm Terrence Dickerson, as Patrick said. I am currently in my sophomore year at Carl Sandburg, or going into it. I'd say I live in Cameron, Illinois, which is about, our nearest city is Galesburg, Illinois, which is like 15 minutes away, and Monmouth, which is about 15 minutes away. It's like in the middle of each. So out here, it's also not very good. Like Tiffany said, it's a small town, not very high-speed internet out here. For going into college for like an upcoming freshman who is in the similar situation as I am, I'd say really getting in contact with your teachers, because as like with the COVID, they have been very like working with you. They talk to you, you know, hey, if you're without Wi-Fi, anything like that, give us a email or a call if you can, you know, something like that. They've given us their cell phone numbers. If you need to call, say your Wi-Fi is out, you can't get assignment submitted. They work with you on that. And I know as well here, Xfinity had a thing where they were giving free Wi-Fi to those who don't have the Wi-Fi access. So they allowed for them to come online and get their assignments done. I'm not too sure if they're going to continue this program throughout the fall, whether that'll be accessible for the students. But one thing that I really do like about Carl Sandburg that they offer 24/7 tutoring online. So that way, if you don't have access to the teacher, it's late at night or something, you have an assignment due, you can easily get into contact with the a tutor, you know, over a certain problem, stuff like that. But really, it's going to be an ongoing thing with internet. You know, being able to have access to it out here, it's more difficult because it's not very fast. It's slow and it's very spotty at times. So really working with it is just, you kind of got to find a balance where you can be able to do things on it. You know, it's hard to achieve sometimes with what's going on right now in the world. But,
Great, thank you. Oh, please, sorry.
Oh, no, you're okay. The teachers, you know, I give them a lot of like props for, you know, they're doing a lot right now, like switching to everything online, and then being able to do like right now, like the Zoom meetings. I know that they're doing that to get in contact, to share their ideas with you, get it across to you and your classmates as well. I know some are they're posting their lectures on YouTube for people who they don't grasp the subject as fast as the others. So put on YouTube so that way you can learn. But again, it sometimes doesn't work if you don't have the access to internet or it's out. Like sometimes it is out here.
Great. Thank you, Terrence. And I think, unfortunately, at least on my end, you're breaking up a little bit, but I guess this is why we're here to talk about all this. So just at the very end, thank you for that. That was very helpful. And Dr. Garrison, I was going to come back to you and ask a question, and Terrence brought it up too, how hard teachers are working to try to overcome the current barriers and obstacles. And just wondering, from your perspective as it relates to your teachers and staff, what's been the impact on them, and what have been some of the both challenges and opportunities that have arisen out of this?
The opportunity is coming together and working as a team to identify our barriers and really look at our partnerships. I can speak a lot about the barriers, even as a parent. So I live in the middle of town and I still have connectivity issues. So during the pandemic, if I wanted to do a meeting like this, I knew I needed to come to the office. So then to extrapolate that to being a parent, think of a teacher that has the same connectivity issues and the parents, a Zoom meeting is almost impossible. So really it's been, how can we leverage asynchronous learning to overcome the digital divide, so that when our students come to the parking lot, or if we get the Wi-Fi, the broadband on a bus, then everything is downloaded at that moment in time. But we're still thinking through the other opportunities, especially if we shift back to remote learning only during the 2021 school year, how we're not creating even larger equity gaps within our student population. And the same for our college students who are still living in the area or going to the community college. We feel it's our duty to make sure that they're connected as well, because the campus, the community college campus, is 45 minutes away. So if they're remote learning only, how can I partner and provide them the access they need to be successful as well? So I guess what I'm saying is the opportunity is partnerships and thinking outside of the box until we can reach hopefully that 2024 timeframe where we do have the access. But I think just educating our policymakers that this is real. I've been on several state committees the past 6 months, and just having this conversation is opening a lot of doors, I will say, of understanding, and then it's problem solving from there.
Thank you. And just a reminder, please feel free to chat in your questions for anyone that's with us right now. Tiffany, I want to come back to you, and we heard Dr. Garrison reference equity gaps. And do you feel, or do you see sometimes in your own education where you do see that there are gaps in access for certain types of students, or whether that be more rural students versus those in town, even though Dr. Garrison did note that even living in town doesn't guarantee her access to broadband. But is there anything you recognize and see in your own experience in education?
Yes, I have seen it in multiple communities that are around, that go to my community college. There's a lot of underdeveloped communities that definitely do not have any access to internet, let alone like high-speed internet. So I can only imagine how difficult it'll be for them during this next school year, trying to, take college classes without having the immediate access of internet at all. My college is doing you park outside and use their internet thing, but I understand that transportation is also a problem for some communities.
That's a great point. Terrence, I welcome you to answer that question, but I'd also ask, we heard earlier from Matt about all the great work that folks in Illinois are doing to try to improve access. It's going to take some time, clearly, but have you noticed any improvements in access in your community in recent years? To broadband, that is?
I'd say it really depends for those who have it. I'd say more like the ones who are in actually the town of Galesburg where the college is at. I wouldn't say for, like, in my case, not really. Out here, really, if you can get it, it's good to have, but it's not easily accessible. There's no real places out here that you can just go and park, you get Wi-Fi, do your homework and stuff. It's just, if you have to have it at home. I don't think there's any places in Monmouth that have that either, besides at the college. I don't know if they're doing anything with that, like how you pull in and then you can use their internet. From what I've heard, there's nothing that I really know. At Carl Sandburg, I believe that they're going to try doing that, but it's just still, either way, the connection won't always be perfect for doing something, for learning online, stuff like that.
Dr. Garrison, I'm going to come back to you, and I think you've obviously answered this, at least in part, but Brian Muniz wrote and asked for folks in Southern Illinois, what are the biggest things that you would like your representatives or your colleagues in Northern Illinois, as well as your representatives in the State House, to understand as it relates to access to technology and broadband in Southern Illinois. So if you're going to communicate those biggest challenges, what are they?
Right. So we've heard a lot about hotspots and deploying devices. We would celebrate funding for cell phone towers at this moment in time because we have so many dead zones that we're trying to figure out how, and I'm not IT, so excuse my ignorance of my language. Is there a certain pack or hotspot that we could ask for an investment from either private funders or state funding that would be a stopgap? So hotspots don't even solve our problem at this moment in time because we don't have the towers. And pricing them, I know a fellow colleague said $124,000 for 4 square miles. If I extrapolate that for 221 square miles, it's not even within my reach. So there's just a lot. I guess the one thing I want them to know is the frustration is real. Being an advocate for my kids from birth through college, we need help to solve this problem. It's real, and what are our next steps?
Thank you. Tiffany and Terrence, I'll come to you first, Tiffany, but I would like to ask you all, just to help us make sure that everybody on the line does understand. So when you don't have access to broadband, how is that really affecting your education and your ability to actually earn your degree? So what are the main benefits and what are the main barriers that you're facing because of a lack of good broadband access? And so Tiffany, come to you first.
Okay, some definite benefits to having broadband access would obviously be able to attend the Zoom classes that are now happening. Well, not now, but that will be happening, and continuing to further your education. And definitely some barriers is the opposite of that, not being able to further your education because you can't attend those Zoom classes and you cannot retain the information that they're teaching you because you're not there and you don't have the ability to watch or to listen or to take notes or do how you would do in a regular school setting.
Terrence, anything you would want to add?
I'd say pretty much what Tiffany said. You know, being there makes it a lot easier. I know friends that had the Zoom calls and they are in the same situation I am, out kind of in the country, and they weren't able to attend it. And I mean, they're missing. You can only get so much through an email besides from face-to-face talk that you can. It makes it a little bit easier to understand when you see their face. You know, maybe they're helping you, writing something down and showing you. It's just a lot easier to get your education through face-to-face contact via the Zoom calls.
Thanks, Terrence. That's helpful. So ask this question to everybody, and I'll start with you, Dr. Garrison. But we heard in our last discussion last week the challenges that a lot of folks face once they do receive their degree and they want to come back to their rural hometown, but the opportunities just aren't there. So I'm curious, Dr. Garrison, is that something you see among your students? Do you see somewhat of a net overall migration out of your rural communities? And if so, what do you think would be some of the ways that we could help start to solve that problem?
So just a little background. I'm from Vandalia, and this is my now 3rd year as superintendent. So I graduated from Vandalia High School. So it was one of the key goals that we had with the school board, and we formed what's called Vandalia 1. So we're looking at workforce development, and what we found initially doing what I call our listening tours is there is a communication barrier between our 18 to 25-year-olds and then skip ahead from our 40 to 70-year-olds. So the employers were saying we have opportunities, and our younger generation, they are saying there are no opportunities in Vandalia or in Fayette County or in the surrounding areas. So our first step towards the collective impact model that we're working on is what actually are the opportunities? Are they minimum wage jobs? Are they factory jobs? Have we taken our students into our factories so they understand it's not the factory in 1977 that my dad worked in, but you can be a chemist in a factory in Vandalia. So it's really breaking down the barriers to understand what the opportunities are. And instead of maybe just using radio and the newspaper, we really need to be where our students are on social media communicating that. So we've just entered that work. We're focusing on manufacturing and healthcare. The data showed working with ISAC and some of our state partners, that's where we needed to start. So we definitely see opportunities there moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison. And Tiffany, do you see this in your friends or family and others? Are they able to stay in the community if they would like to?
Pardon, you cut out a little bit for me.
Sorry. Yeah, just wondering if among your friends and family, do you see some people who want to stay in the area but don't quite have the opportunities that they would like for work and therefore have to leave? Or do you feel that most people are able to stay?
I definitely see it. A lot of my friends, actually my best friend recently just moved to Georgia for a job opportunity that she wouldn't have been able to have here.
You're muted.
Oh.
Patrick.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison. Terrence, do you see the same among your friends and family?
Yeah, a lot of people move away from here. There's not very many opportunities out here to take a job besides construction working. That's about the main one that I see that people stay for. But other than that, nursing, people tend to end up leaving state, going elsewhere to pursue their interests.
So we're coming up on time, but I did want to ask a closing question of each of you. And I feel that by nature of this discussion, a lot of the conversation has been somewhat pessimistic and about the challenges. And that would be my fault for asking you questions that lead you to that direction. But I would like to end on a more positive note, because I know we have folks like you who are committed to your communities and helping improve things as it relates to broadband access and education generally. So I want to ask you all, what are some things that make you hopeful about your communities and going forward in the next years? Dr. Garrison, I'll start with you.
Yeah, just really highlighting our opportunities and our partnerships. As we look at COVID-19 and how the community, whether it was a tragic accident in November or it was looking at how we support our children in a blended remote model. Yes, everybody knows everybody, but that's a benefit because we are all rallying to provide free childcare to our families in a safe environment. So they have access to Wi-Fi, they have access to a meal. So the opportunity I want to highlight of rural Illinois is the connections and the caring for one another.
Thank you. Tiffany?
Something that really gives me hope is just having conversations like this and having people see that there is a need, or there is a improper balance of things, if you will, and feeling the need to take action and definitely do some changes. That really gives me hope.
Thank you, Tiffany. And Terrence?
I agree with what Tiffany said, how we're having this call. There's clear, people see there's a problem with the balance of Wi-Fi. I mean, I see people in my community who want to try and help make this easier for, I mean, not even just college students, for kids that are younger than me that are going to be going into this, because it'll be different going into college, but you're not really going into college. You're online and stuff. And I mean, having the access to do it will make it a whole lot easier for, I mean, everyone if they need to do this.
Thank you, Terrence. And thank you to all three of you so much for joining us today. It was really great to hear your perspectives, and despite the challenges you're all facing right now, exciting to hear about how you're overcoming those, and look forward to hopefully hearing from you all again. I would also just quickly note that Dina Lawrence chatted in a question just about how we make sure we're distributing information, especially in places that lack rural access. And so how are we doing it aside from sharing it online? And I think that's a question we will try to make sure we address in our key takeaways, and we'll follow up with that. So thanks for chatting that in. Finally, just thank you again to everybody who joined us today. I know there's a lot of work to be done, and excited about the group of individuals that we have seen on these calls who are all ready to help make that work happen. So we have one more discussion scheduled for now on August 6th at 10:30 Central Time, where we'll be spotlighting what we heard a lot about today, the idea of community partnerships and how they can help impact post-secondary attainment. So we hope you'll join us for that. We'll be sending out the registration link in response to this this webinar. And we will also be posting a video recording of this discussion, as well as the key takeaways, as we noted, that we'll share out with everybody who attended. So in case you missed something, you'll be able to find it. Finally, I would just like to thank Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton once more for helping put all this together, and for her dedication to the rural students of Illinois. If there are any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at the Hunt Institute, and we will be happy to follow up with you as quickly as we can. We hope to see you all again on August 6th. And thank you again to all of our great panelists. Bye-bye.
Thank you.